September 22, 1980. Dawn breaks along the Iran-Iraq border near Khorramshahr. Iraqi artillery thundered across the frontier, marking the beginning of what Saddam Hussein and his commanders believed would be a decisive three-month campaign. Iraq possessed 12 mechanized divisions and over 2,000 tanks. The numbers suggested overwhelming advantage, yet within 3 months, the invasion stalled completely. By June 1982, every Iraqi soldier had been pushed back across the border. The war would drag on for 8 brutal years, claiming perhaps 500,000 lives and ending in stalemate. The failure revealed something military planners have long understood about certain nations. Iran's defense doesn't rest primarily on military technology or troop numbers. The country is protected by a combination of factors that has made it what defense analysts consider the most invasion-resistant nation in the modern Middle East. This defensive strength explains why no nation has attempted a conventional invasion of Iran since 1980, and why even the most powerful militaries in the world have consistently chosen other strategies when confronting Tehran. The answer lies in how geography, strategic positioning, and modern defensive infrastructure combine to create barriers that make conquest extraordinarily costly. Understanding Iran's defensive advantages requires looking beyond its military capabilities to the terrain itself and what Iran has built within it. The foundation of Iran's defensive strength lies in terrain that has repelled invaders for millennia. The country spans an area almost 4 times the size of Iraq, providing what military strategists call strategic depth. Distance matters in warfare. The farther an invading force must penetrate, the longer its supply lines stretch, the more vulnerable it becomes. But size alone doesn't explain Iran's defensive advantages. The real barriers are vertical, not horizontal. The Zagros Mountains form a natural wall along Iran's western border with Iraq, running for nearly 900 miles. These aren't rolling hills or modest elevations. The Zagros peaks reach heights exceeding 14,000 feet, with countless ridges, valleys, and passes creating a defensive maze. Most of Iran's critical population centers either nestle within these mountains or sit protected behind them. Tehran, with over 8 million residents, sits insulated by the Elburz Mountains to the north. Isfahan, Shiraz, Tabriz, all major Iranian cities benefit from mountainous defensive barriers. For an invading force, mountains create nightmare logistics. Every road becomes a choke point, and every pass requires securing. Supply convoys must wind through terrain where defenders hold every advantage. Artillery positioned on high ground dominates valleys below. Ambush sites multiply endlessly. Even with air superiority, close air support becomes difficult in broken terrain where targets disappear into ravines and caves. The Iran-Iraq War demonstrated these realities with brutal clarity. Iraqi forces, despite their numerical and equipment advantages, could advance only through a few narrow corridors in the flat borderlands near Khuzestan. Once they approached the foothills of the Zagros, their momentum died. Iranian forces, many of them poorly equipped Revolutionary Guards, used the terrain to neutralize Iraqi armor. Tank battalions designed for desert warfare found themselves confined to roads, vulnerable to ambushes from above. Iran's military doctrine, developed from the hard lessons of that 8-year war, explicitly leverages this geographic advantage. What Tehran calls passive defense emphasizes camouflage, concealment, underground facilities, and dispersed forces. Rather than concentrating military assets where they can be destroyed by airstrikes, Iran spreads capabilities throughout mountainous terrain where they become nearly impossible to target effectively. This defensive philosophy extends to Iran's most revolutionary military development, an extensive network of underground facilities that has no parallel in the modern world. Beginning in the 1980s during the war with Iraq, Iran began carving massive complexes into the mountains themselves. What started as protective measures has evolved into a comprehensive underground military infrastructure that fundamentally changes the strategic equation. In March 2025, Iranian state media released footage of what commanders called a missile city, one of dozens of such facilities scattered throughout the country. The video showed Iranian military leaders riding through tunnels hundreds of meters long, lined with ballistic missiles on mobile launchers. The Khaybar Shekin, Haj Qasim, Ghadir H, Sejil missiles, all visible in a single frame, showing at least 7 78 weapons ready for immediate launch. These aren't simple storage bunkers, they're sophisticated military facilities with railway systems that move missiles to multiple launch positions. Some facilities feature vertical launch capabilities, with missiles positioned on rail cars that move to firing apertures. The tunnel systems allow rapid, consecutive launches before any counterstrike could arrive. Where traditional missile silos in other countries hold single weapons vulnerable to precision strikes, Iran's mountain facilities can launch dozens of missiles in minutes from multiple openings spread across square miles of terrain. The depth of these installations provides protection that renders them nearly invulnerable to conventional attack. Iranian military officials claim some facilities reach depths of 500 meters, over 1,600 feet into solid mountain. At those depths, even the most powerful bunker-busting weapons in the American or Israeli arsenals would struggle to penetrate. The mountains themselves absorb the impact, protecting the facilities within. Each underground city features multiple entrances and exits, sometimes dozens of them, separated by hundreds or thousands of meters. Destroying one entrance accomplishes little when missiles can launch from 10 others. The facilities are interconnected by tunnel networks that allow forces to move undercover, invisible to satellites and reconnaissance aircraft. Above ground, the entrances blend into mountainous terrain, camouflaged and dispersed to avoid easy targeting. Iran hasn't limited this underground construction to missile bases. In February 2023, Iranian media revealed an underground airbase capable of sheltering fighter aircraft with F-4 Phantom jets protected inside mountain caverns, underground naval bases along the southern coast house speedboats equipped with cruise missiles. The scale of this underground infrastructure remains partially unknown, which itself serves as a strategic advantage. Iranian commanders have claimed that unveiling one missile city every week for 2 years wouldn't exhaust their inventory. Whether this represents accurate counting or strategic messaging, the assertion illustrates Iran's substantial investment in hardened facilities. Intelligence estimates suggest dozens of such complexes exist, mostly in western mountainous regions near potential invasion routes. This underground revolution addresses Iran's most significant military weakness: its aging air force and limited air defense coverage. By moving critical assets underground, Tehran compensates for air defense gaps. Missiles don't need air superiority if they launch from mountain fortresses. The combination of mountainous terrain and underground infrastructure creates layered defensive depth that multiplies with every mile an invader penetrates. First, they must breach border defenses in the few accessible corridors. Then, navigate mountains where every valley becomes a potential kill zone. Then, locate and neutralize underground facilities that can continue operations even under heavy bombardment. And all of this while extending supply lines through hostile terrain, vulnerable to counterattack. But Iran's defensive advantages extend beyond its borders, reaching into the very arteries of global commerce. The Strait of Hormuz, the narrow waterway separating Iran from Oman, provides Tehran with strategic leverage that makes military action against Iran carry risks far beyond the battlefield. At its narrowest point, the Strait of Hormuz measures just 21 miles wide. The navigable shipping lanes for massive oil tankers narrow even further, only 2 miles in each direction, with a 2-mile buffer zone between them. Every ship passing through these lanes enters Iranian territorial waters. In 2024, approximately 20 million barrels of oil per day flowed through this choke point, representing roughly 20% of global petroleum consumption. An additional 22% of global liquefied natural gas trade passes through the same narrow waters. The numbers translate to stark economic reality. Any disruption to Strait of Hormuz traffic would immediately impact global energy markets. China sources over 5 million barrels per day through the strait. India imports more than 2 million barrels daily. Japan, South Korea, and much of East Asia depend on Hormuz for their energy security, while Saudi Arabia and the United Arab Emirates have pipelines that can bypass the strait with limited capacity. No alternative exists for the massive volumes that normally flow through. Iran has repeatedly threatened to close the strait during periods of tension with the West. Iran possesses military capabilities to seriously disrupt shipping, speedboats equipped with anti-ship missiles, mine-laying capability, and coastal missile batteries overlooking the entire waterway. During the 1980s Iran-Iraq War, both nations attacked oil tankers in what became known as the Tanker War. Over 8 years, 411 ships were attacked, 239 of them petroleum tankers. Iran never actually closed close the strait, but demonstrated it could make shipping through the waterway dangerous enough to raise insurance costs and create hesitation among commercial operators. International naval intervention, primarily from the United States and European nations, was required to maintain safe passage. The United States Navy's Fifth Fleet, stationed in Bahrain since 1995, exists largely to guarantee freedom of navigation through the Strait of Hormuz. But even overwhelming American naval superiority cannot eliminate the threat Iran poses to shipping. Modern anti-ship missiles, launched from land bases or speedboats, can strike before naval vessels can intercept. Mining operations could take days or weeks to clear. The narrow shipping lanes mean even limited Iranian success could effectively halt traffic until the threat is eliminated. This creates a strategic paradox. Military action against Iran would likely trigger the very disruption planners seek to prevent. Attacking Iranian military targets could lead Iran to respond by targeting oil infrastructure or blocking the strait. The resulting spike in global oil prices and economic disruption would harm the international community far more than any limited military strikes would benefit it. The economic weapon Iran possesses through geographic positioning provides deterrence without requiring sophisticated military technology. The combination of defensive advantages helps explain why even the United States, the world's dominant military power, has consistently chosen strategies other than direct invasion when dealing with Iran. The pattern dates back 7 decades to a moment when American policymakers confronted the same geographic and strategic realities that constrain options today. In 1953, when Iranian Prime Minister Mohammad Mossadegh nationalized the Anglo-Iranian Oil Company, threatening Western petroleum interests, neither the United States nor Britain considered military invasion a viable option. Instead, the CIA orchestrated Operation Ajax, a covert coup that removed Mossadegh and reinstalled the Shah with increased powers. The operation cost approximately $60,000 according to CIA operative Kermit Roosevelt Jr., a fraction of what military action would have required. The choice of covert action over invasion suggests more than just cost considerations. American and British planners appear to have understood that occupying Iran would require a massive military commitment with uncertain prospects for success. Iran's size, terrain, and population indicated that subjugation would prove impractical. Even installing a friendly government through military force would have required garrisoning forces throughout mountainous territory against a potentially hostile population. A coup, however risky and morally questionable, offered a way around geographic obstacles that would have made conventional conquest prohibitively difficult. The 1953 intervention's long-term consequences, fueling anti-Western sentiment that contributed to the 1979 Islamic Revolution, demonstrated that even covert action carries severe risks when dealing with Iran. But the fact that covert action was chosen over invasion reveals how seriously American planners took Iran's defensive advantages even before underground missile cities and modern anti-ship weapons entered the equation. Modern military technology hasn't eliminated Iran's geographic advantages. If anything, precision-guided weapons and advanced surveillance have made the defensive value of mountains and underground facilities even greater. Satellite reconnaissance can track troop movements on open terrain, but cannot penetrate hundreds of meters of solid rock. Precision strikes can destroy surface targets with remarkable accuracy, but become far less effective against dispersed, hardened facilities. Stealth aircraft can evade radar detection, but still must identify and reach targets hidden in mountain complexes with multiple entrances and camouflaged positions. The 1980 Iraqi invasion provides the most relevant case study of what happens when a regional power attempts to conquer Iran through conventional means. Iraq entered the war with significant advantages. Their military had been modernized with Soviet equipment. They enjoyed financial backing from wealthy Gulf Arab states. They faced an Iran weakened by revolutionary purges and international isolation. Yet despite these advantages, Iraq's invasion stalled within 3 months, and the war dragged on for 8 years without achieving Iraqi objectives. The stalemate resulted directly from Iran's ability to use its geographic advantages and larger population to absorb initial defeats and mount effective defense. Once Iraqi forces reached the Zagros foothills, their advance died. Iranian forces, though poorly equipped compared to Iraqi mechanized divisions, leveraged terrain to neutralize Iraqi advantages. The war eventually cost both sides hundreds of thousands of casualties while achieving nothing. Iraq gained no territory and faced massive war debt that would later contribute to its disastrous 1990 invasion of Kuwait. If Iraq, with its regional military power and external support, could not conquer Iran, the prospects for any other regional actor appear even bleaker. Iran's military capabilities have grown substantially since 1980. The underground missile infrastructure provides strike capabilities that didn't exist during the Iraq War. Coastal defenses along the Persian Gulf have been modernized with anti-ship weapons. While Iran's conventional military remains inferior to forces like the United States, its asymmetric capabilities and defensive advantages have only increased. For a superpower like the United States, the challenges multiply further. American military superiority would certainly allow air dominance and precision strikes against Iranian targets, but air power alone cannot occupy territory or remove a government. Ground forces would be required, and deploying them into Iran's mountainous interior against dispersed defenses and underground facilities would require troop commitments far exceeding recent American conflicts in Iraq and Afghanistan. American forces conquered Iraq in 2003 with roughly 150,000 troops, facing an army that collapsed within weeks. But Iraq is a quarter of Iran's size. With terrain dominated by accessible plains and desert, Iran's population of over 80 million is 4 times larger than Iraq's was in 2003. The mountainous terrain would fragment invasion forces into vulnerable columns on limited road networks. Underground facilities would continue launching missiles even under sustained bombardment, and all of this would unfold while risking disruption to global energy supplies through the Strait of Hormuz. Military analysts who study invasion scenarios of Iran tend to reach similar conclusions. Based on terrain analysis, force requirements, and historical precedents, conquering Iran would likely require troop deployments potentially exceeding 500,000 soldiers, sustained operations lasting years, and casualties that would dwarf recent American conflicts. Even then, success would be far from guaranteed against a nation that can leverage mountains, underground infrastructure, and strategic positioning to impose devastating costs on invaders. The economic dimension adds another layer of deterrence. Iran's location adjacent to the Strait of Hormuz means any military conflict risks global economic disruption. Even limited strikes on Iranian nuclear facilities or military targets could provoke Iranian retaliation against oil infrastructure or shipping. The resulting spike in oil prices would harm the global economy, creating political pressure to end military operations before strategic objectives are achieved. This combination of geographic, military, and economic factors creates what strategists call defense dominance. Iran cannot project significant power beyond its borders, limited by the same mountains that protect it and by economic sanctions that constrain military modernization. But within its borders and immediate vicinity, Iran possesses advantages that make conquest extraordinarily difficult and costly. The underground missile cities represent the culmination of this defensive strategy. By moving strike capabilities into mountain fortresses, Iran ensures it can retaliate against attackers even if its conventional military is defeated. The missiles housed in these facilities can reach targets throughout the Middle East, including American military bases in neighboring countries. Israeli cities lie within range of Iranian ballistic missiles. Saudi oil infrastructure remains vulnerable to Iranian strikes. The ability to launch these weapons from protected positions means Iran maintains deterrent capability regardless of air superiority or surface warfare outcomes. Iran's military doctrine accepts that it cannot win conventional battles against superior forces. Instead, the strategy focuses on imposing costs high enough to make military action against Iran unattractive. The mountains make invasion impractical. The underground infrastructure ensures strike capabilities survive initial attacks. The Strait of Hormuz position allows economic leverage. Combined, these advantages don't make Iran invulnerable, but they make the cost of conquest prohibitively high relative to any conceivable benefit. Modern military history offers few examples of major powers successfully conquering and occupying nations with Iran's combination of size, terrain, and defensive preparation. The Soviet experience in Afghanistan and American experiences in Iraq and Afghanistan demonstrated the difficulty of maintaining occupation against insurgencies in challenging terrain. Iran presents all these challenges multiplied, larger than Afghanistan, more populous than Iraq, with military capabilities specifically designed for defensive warfare against technologically superior opponents. The underground facilities add a dimension that didn't exist in previous conflicts. Critical military capabilities protected by terrain that makes them nearly impossible to destroy without massive ground campaigns to physically seize and clear each facility. These realities explain why military action against Iran, despite recurring tensions over its nuclear program and regional activities, remains confined to limited strikes, sanctions, and covert operations. The geographic and strategic barriers that deterred invasion in 1953 remain largely unchanged despite 7 decades of technological advancement. Mountains still channel invaders through predictable routes. Underground facilities still require ground forces to neutralize. The Strait of Hormuz still carries a fifth of global oil supplies through narrow waters adjacent to Iranian territory. September 22, 1980, marked the last time a nation attempted large-scale conventional invasion of Iran. The 8-year war that followed demonstrated conclusively what military planners already understood. Some nations, through a combination of geography, strategic positioning, and defensive preparation, become effectively immune to conquest by conventional military means. Iran stands as perhaps the clearest modern example of this principle. The mountains that have protected Persian civilization for thousands of years continue serving that function in the 21st century. The underground cities carved into those mountains represent the modern evolution of defensive strategies, as old as fortification itself, using terrain and engineering to multiply defensive advantages. The Strait of Hormuz provides leverage that extends Iran's defensive reach into the global economy itself, making military action against Iran threaten not just regional but worldwide interests. None of this makes Iran invulnerable to all forms of pressure or attack. Limited military strikes, economic sanctions, cyber warfare, and covert operations all remain viable options for nations seeking to constrain Iranian actions. But large-scale invasion to conquer and occupy Iran, to overthrow its government through military force, remains as impractical today as it was when Saddam Hussein's tanks stalled in the foothills of the Zagros Mountains. The one weapon that makes Iran almost impossible to invade isn't a missile or a tank or a fortification. It's the combination of geography, strategic positioning, and defensive infrastructure that creates layered barriers too formidable for any attacker to overcome at acceptable cost. The mountains that form natural walls, the underground cities carved from solid rock, the narrow strait through which global commerce flows. Together, these advantages create a defensive posture that has deterred invasion for decades and will likely continue doing so for decades to come. Iraq learned this lesson at the cost of hundreds of thousands of casualties and a war that destroyed its economy. The lesson remains relevant today for any nation that might contemplate military action against Iran. Some defensive advantages cannot be overcome by technological superiority or numerical advantage. Sometimes, the terrain itself decides the outcome before the first shot is fired.